There's a lot of anecdotal advice around on improving your marriage. But if you want something you can really use that will actually make a difference and reignite your marriage, check out the link in the description below.
The question, why do people need space in a healthy relationship? Answer by Kimball William Bartlett. Allow me to preface this by saying that I'm not married, and the longest relationship I've had was about 4 months. Ish. I haven't had a lot of long-term romantic relationships, but I have dated a lot, probably on average of 2 times a week, generally with a different girl for the past 6 months. I'm probably not the best person to go for relationship advice, but I will say I learned some fantastic insight on this within the last 3 months. I recently dated, not seriously, but went on multiple dates and didn't get serious when the question came to a head. 2 girls, both who conveniently had the same name. For the sake of privacy, I'm going to call them both Sarah. I started dating Sarah shortly after I moved from Dallas, Texas back to Utah. For a number of reasons, life was in a bit of a weird state, and I had recently just ended within the last 3 months my longest, and probably best relationship that I've had thus far in my life. So I wasn't super interested in a serious relationship, but I felt dating with LP moved me unemotionally. Sarah was a very sweet, smart and intellectual girl and very self-motivated and lived about 4 blocks away. A good chunk of time we spent together was her coming over to hang out, typically reading or doing homework while I worked in my garage on a big production project I got from work, making 1,000 miniature pyramid puzzles, specifically 1,000 of these babies out of cedar wood. I really liked that we got to spend time with each other, without strictly being focused on each other or doing something with each other. This is probably the biggest thing I'd like to point out, but we'll come back to it. Sarah too came later. Our first date was pretty great and full of fantastic conversation, and we decided that we'd end up watching all of Stranger Things Season 2 together, which I had been too busy to get around, and also cause I'm not huge on just sitting and watching TV for hours. Disclaimer, Stranger Things is awesome, and the second season was stellar. This ended up being 4 hours of cuddling on my couch while watching TV, and after a few nights of being up until 2 or 3 a.m., I needed to get my life back in order since I had work at 7 a.m. After we were done with that, hanging out became us spending usually 3 hours together just focused on each other, and nothing else. I had to set a big block of time for us to do something, unless it was a quick get-together for lunch or something similar. The kicker came when she was over. I had made lunch for both of us and I sat down to eat, and pulled out my phone to read a bit, and she grabbed my phone and set it on the other side of the table. It was weird at the time, so we just talked for a bit, and then I went to school and she went to work. In the end, I just kind of started saying I was busy, busier than being able to make 3 or 4 hours in an evening to spend wholly and completely on one person. I needed space. So eventually I talked it out and said I wasn't really interested in a relationship, and that was that. So here's my thing. Sarah and I were totally capable of spending time together, but not necessarily on each other. And, when I thought about both of these short instances I spent with either girl, I realized how big of a deal that was. Now, in no way am I saying that you should ignore your significant other or someone you're dating while you're on the date with them, but at some point when that relationship begins to evolve beyond dating, and becomes hanging out and spending casual time together, you have to come to realize that at the end of the day, you're both people and typically have very different interests. And as a person with unique and different interests, honestly you need to learn how to both express yourself emotionally or creatively, and how to blow off steam or explore hobbies. First of all, a person who is capable of pursuing their own interests is quite frankly more interesting and more developed as a person. And second of all, you as an adult need to spend time doing your own thing. When you enter a serious and long-term relationship, or get married, or even move in with friends or family, you are not going to spend 100% of your free time with those people. You all are going to do your own thing, and the ability to pursue your own thing is something you need to cultivate. In fact, most people already do this anyways, so the trick is therefore understanding how to make your relationships function while you are pursuing your own interests, and so, you can share interest in the hobbies of your significant other. And by all means, you should share your own interests with your significant other. In fact, you can build incredible and great relationships in sharing your interests, and shared interest has helped me develop my strongest relationships with those I love. But the trick is learning to keep yourself entertained, giving time to your hobbies, and pursuing them while your significant other is around, but perhaps not particularly with them. In essence, learning to spend time with your significant other without explicitly spending time on your significant other. On reflection, I couldn't tell you how awesome it was when Sarah One would come over and sit, reading in my garage while I was focused on working, cooking a meal, crafting a project, or finishing a phone call with a friend. And don't get me wrong, we got around to spending time on each other, but she wanted to come over for the sake of just being around me. And that spoke volumes of both her character and her feelings. A great example, and probably the last one I want to share, was while I was waiting for Sarah One to come over. She wanted to walk even though I offered to pick her up. I was playing a video game online with my two best friends. She rang the doorbell, and I told her I was just playing a game, and she told me to go ahead and finish whatever match or quest or mission I was doing, even though I fully intended to just turn it off. And then she asked me about the game I was playing and who I was playing with. Honestly, the game itself didn't matter, but she was completely comfortable and even open and supportive of whatever it was that I was doing. It's unfortunate that it didn't necessarily work out in the long run, but she definitely taught me a lot about what it means to both give and share space in a healthy relationship. Answer by Trini Karyaga. I love to use Khalil Gibran beautiful poetry to explain this. He has a poem called On Marriage. You were born together, and together you shall be forevermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days. You shall be together even in the silent memory of God. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love, let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup of drink not from one cup. Give one another of your br, eat but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone, even as the strings of a lute are low, no they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping. For only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow. I bolted the parts that speak to having space in your relationship. Basically, two people in a relationship are to become one, especially once married, but not one as in one single unit morphed together. You are to become one as two units working together in harmony. It doesn't mean everything will be perfect or happen perfectly, but that you will be able to bring both of your individual traits, talents, quirks, ways, minds, and selves together and create something altogether new and lovely. Without knowing who you are as individuals, you cannot come together to create something new. Two pillars of a temple both hold up the exact same temple and stand for the same reason, to keep the temple up. The temple is a good metaphor for having similar values and a common foundation with the one you love. However, the closer the pillars get, and the more the two become one singular pillar, the more the structural integrity of the temple can be compromised and the weaker it will become. This doesn't mean you have to separate yourself from your partner for long stretches at a time, unless you've both agreed that's what you need, but rather it's about just knowing who you are as individual people and not losing touch in who you are as an individual. You are both beautiful souls with beautiful things to bring to the table, and you should be able to appreciate this fact and enjoy the entire table together for its variety, not its sameness. Answer by Doug Army. When I started my financial practice, I went for 2 weeks to the company headquarters. Longest my wife and I had been apart since marrying. I really missed her. No, actually, I really missed her. And it was January in St. Louis. For a California boy, the ice storms were freaking cold. I mean, what the hell? From the time we were married, we'd spent a few days apart. I owned a business in a distant city and commuted most weeks for a night or two. She'd go on a women's retreat for a couple of nights, but never anything lengthy. The good news is I learned how much I missed her. The bad news is I learned how much I freaking missed her. We talked every night, but it just wasn't the same. Crawling into a cold bed without her was, well, not my idea of comforting. She at least had the kids and dogs. I flew home on a Saturday. When I walked in the front door, she met me. We hugged and kissed for longer than I ever remember doing in the entry. I missed you, she said. Well, I missed you too, I responded. The kids are gone tonight, she went on. Oh, that's a shame, I replied. It was lovely crawling into a warm bed with my wife. Through the years we purposely built in space in our relationship. A couple of days away here or there. A few separate friends that we occasionally see. Every workday, on the weekends, we pursue our own interests that don't always intersect. But we also limit it. Keep it manageable. No reason to build in temptation. And it makes our time together so much sweeter. Also gives my wife a break from me, which I can only imagine she needs far more than she will say. Closeness in a relationship paradoxically grows best by letting each other share the sunshine.